Let us begin our journey, a slow, unhurried drift through the ancient lands of Britain, not the bustling, tumultuous Britain of historical accounts, filled with tribal conflicts and Roman legions, but a Britain softened by the gentle, all-encompassing veil of a very, very late evening. Imagine, if you will, the land as it quietly settles, not with a sudden, abrupt hush, but with a gradual, almost imperceptible dimming of its daytime energies, a slow exhalation of the world's breath. Our focus tonight is on a simple ancient Briton, a woman named Ella, whose life on this particular evening is marked by the most profound and comforting absence of event. There is no urgency in her movements, no particular destination in mind, only the quiet, predictable unfolding of a peaceful, uneventful night. Ella was an elderly woman, a weaver of simple yet durable woolen cloths. Her hands, though gnarled with age and the countless passes of the shuttle through the warp threads, still possessed a certain gentle dexterity, a slow, practiced grace that had been honed over decades of consistent, repetitive effort. Each day had flowed into the next, much like the steady rhythm of her loom, a predictable cycle of spinning raw wool into thread, setting up the warp, and then patiently, meticulously, weaving the weft, thread by thread, until a new length of cloth, slowly, steadily, came into being. But now, the sun had long since dipped below the horizon, its last light having diffused into the upper atmosphere, and the land, having exerted its daytime energies, was preparing for its quiet, enveloping slumber. Our story begins not at the dramatic hill forts, where warriors once gathered, nor by the sacred standing stones, where ancient rituals were performed, but within a small, unassuming roundhouse, nestled gently on a low rise, overlooking a quiet, winding stream. It was a dwelling known more for its quietude and its enduring presence than for any notable event or grand history. The air, here in this secluded corner of the sprawling land, was still, remarkably still, carrying only the faintest, almost imperceptible scent of damp earth, stirred perhaps by a recent light shower and the distant, subtle perfume of wood smoke rising from a neighboring hearth, or perhaps from her own, where the embers still glowed. It was a comfortable scent, a familiar scent, one that had permeated Ella's life for as long as she could remember, a quiet aroma that spoke of home and hearth and the gentle passage of seasons. Ella stood just inside the entrance of her modest roundhouse, a structure of woven wattle and daub, topped with a thick, insulating layer of thatch. The walls were simple, without any grand decoration, just honest materials aged by sun and wind and time. She wore a simple, unbleached tunic of homespun wool, its fabric soft and worn from countless washings, the threads pliable and gentle against her skin. Her feet, too, were bare, their soles toughened by years of walking on earth and grass, making no sound, absolutely no sound, as she shifted her weight ever so slightly from one foot to the other. She wasn't engaged in any specific activity, not thinking about tasks or problems, merely observing the deepening twilight through the open doorway, allowing her senses to gently absorb the quiet transformation of the world around her. The light was fading, not with a dramatic rush of color or a sudden darkening, but with a slow, even, almost reluctant retreat, a gentle softening of the world's edges, as if the sharp definitions of day were melting into a more yielding, indistinct form. The harsh, distinct shadows of midday had elongated, stretching out like tired limbs across the floor, then blurred into soft, indistinct masses, and were now, finally, dissolving entirely into the uniform, comforting gray of the approaching night. She watched, with an unblinking, quiet gaze, a single, dry blade of grass, brittle and pale, detached itself from the edge of the thatched roof, just above the doorway. It didn't twirl or dance in any significant breeze, for there was none. The air was too still for such energetic motion. It simply detached itself, released its tenuous hold on the bundle of straw, and floated downwards in a trajectory so slow, so deliberate, that it seemed almost suspended in the utterly still air, defying gravity for a prolonged moment, before finally, softly, settling onto the packed earth floor just inside the entrance. There was no sound when it landed, none at all, not even the faintest rustle. It was a silent, graceful surrender to the quiet inevitability of evening. Ella then turned, very slowly, with a movement that spoke of deep internal calm, and stepped further into the quiet embrace of her roundhouse. The interior was already steeped in dimness, the familiar shapes of her loom, her spinning wheel, and her various baskets appearing as soft, indistinct forms in the fading light, their details softened, their edges blurred. She moved towards the central hearth, a circular pit lined with stones, where the embers of her cooking fire still glowed faintly, a quiet, pulsing heart of warmth in the gathering cool. Her movements were deliberate, unhurried, each action flowing seamlessly into the next. She took a small, flat stone from a pile nearby, its surface smooth and cool beneath her fingers, and carefully, oh so carefully, with a practiced hand, began to push the glowing embers towards the center of the hearth. This was the process of banking the fire, ensuring it would retain its warmth through the long, cool night, ready to be coaxed back to life in the morning. The embers shifted with a soft, almost inaudible hiss, a gentle whisper of dying heat. She didn't add new fuel immediately. No, that would be too quick, too sudden, too abrupt for this particular evening, for this particular transition from day to night. She simply watched the embers, feeling the gentle warmth radiating upwards from the hearth. She felt the subtle heat on her face, a comforting, familiar sensation. She could faintly perceive the level of the ash within the pit, a slight, almost imperceptible shift of texture as she gently nudged the embers. The air inside the roundhouse was cool, with a distinct, yet subtle, earthy smell of peat and wood smoke, a smell that was deeply ingrained into the very fabric of the wattle and daub walls, the thatched roof, and indeed into Ella herself, a scent that was almost a part of her very being. She then moved, with a slow, shuffling step, her bare feet whispering against the packed earth floor, towards her small, simple wooden stool. It was a low stool, its wood smooth and worn from countless sittings. She picked it up with both hands, her fingers wrapping around the smooth, worn wood. It was a light stool, its wood smooth and polished from countless sittings, from the friction of many hands. She carried it to the side of the hearth, her steps slow and measured, each one a deliberate placement of her weight. She then set it down with infinite gentleness, ensuring it made no more than the softest, most almost inaudible thud against the packed earth floor, a sound that quickly dissipated into the surrounding quiet. She did not sit on it, not yet. Instead, she went to a small, low shelf built into the curved wall. On it were arrayed a few finished pieces of her weaving, tightly rolled bundles of cloth, awaiting use or trade. She ran her hand over their smooth, tightly woven surfaces. They were cool to the touch and completely, utterly dry, ready for their purpose. She felt the subtle texture of the spun wool, the faint, almost invisible variations in the weave that made each piece unique, yet fundamentally similar to all the others she had crafted. She felt the evenness of the edges, the consistent density of the fabric. Her fingers moved slowly, deliberately, from one roll of cloth to the next, a quiet, repetitive gesture of acknowledgement, a silent communion with her creations. She then took a small, soft brush made of finely bound animal hair from a hook on the wall. She used it to brush away any stray specks of dust, any minute particles that might have settled, imperceptibly, on the finished cloths. The bristles were exquisitely soft, almost imperceptible against the wool, making no sound, absolutely no sound, as they moved across the surface. Back and forth, a quiet, soothing rhythm, a tireless dance against the ever-present dust. The dust, she knew, was an inevitable companion to all things, a silent, tireless presence that gathered on every surface, a constant reminder of the world's gentle, continuous decay and renewal. She then replaced the brush on its hook, her movements again, unhurried, precise, a silent conclusion to that particular small task. She returned to the stool by the hearth. This time, she slowly, carefully, with a deep sense of unhurried calm, lowered herself onto it. The stool did not creak, the earth floor did not groan. She simply settled, her body easing into the familiar, comforting contours of the worn wood, a perfect fit. She sat there in the deepening dimness, surrounded by the silent, waiting forms of her weaving, their presence a quiet, comforting stillness. The air in the roundhouse was growing cooler now, the gentle chill of the ancient British night beginning to truly settle in. A subtle, almost imperceptible drop in temperature, a gentle shift from the lingering warmth of the day to the cooler, more enveloping embrace of the night. She noticed the faint scent of damp earth, a primal aroma rising from the floor, mingling with the last hints of wood smoke. It was a comforting, familiar scent, one that spoke of the land itself, of sustenance, and the shared, ancient rhythms of life in this quiet corner of the world. She looked around the small, circular space. Every tool, every fragment of wool, every finished cloth seemed to possess a quiet, unassuming dignity in the dimming light. Their forms softened, their purpose clear. Nothing was out of place. Everything was precisely where it should be, held in a perfect, still order. The very order of the roundhouse, its meticulous arrangement, contributed to the profound sense of peace that permeated the space. There was no clutter, no chaos, no sudden, unexpected element to disturb the quiet harmony, no jarring sight to disrupt the calm. A distant sound then drifted in through the open doorway, barely audible, a thread of sound woven into the silence. It was the soft, rhythmic hoot of a single owl. Not a chorus of owls, not a sudden burst of sound, but a solitary, consistent hooting, repeating itself over and over again, an unwavering pattern in the deepening quiet. Its regularity was almost mesmerizing, a gentle pulse in the stillness. It was a comforting sound, a sound that spoke of stillness and the slow, inexorable passage of night. A natural rhythm that underscored the profound peace of the wild land. She then slowly lifted her gaze to the conical ceiling, where the thick layers of thatch met at a central smoke hole. It was made of rough-hewn timber rafters, dark with age and the faint, almost invisible stains of countless years of wood smoke. She traced the long, straight lines of the rafters with her eyes, following their unyielding paths upwards, meeting at the apex. They were strong, solid, enduring, testaments to their ancient origins. They provided a quiet, reassuring sense of shelter, of protection from the vast, open, indifferent sky above, a feeling of being safely enclosed, deeply secure. She then lowered her gaze, her eyes settling on the packed earth floor beneath her feet. It was uneven in places, worn smooth and firm by the passage of countless footsteps, by the endless comings and goings of workers and visitors over the centuries. There were faint, almost imperceptible indentations where her loom rested, where her own feet had stood for countless hours, working the pedals, passing the shuttle. These marks were not flaws, but rather quiet testimonies to time, to work, to the slow, steady rhythm of life that had unfolded within these walls. She breathed in slowly, deeply, feeling the cool, still air fill her lungs, expanding her chest ever so gently. Then she exhaled, equally slowly, equally deeply, the air leaving her body in a gentle sigh. Her breathing was soft, even, regular, a profound internal rhythm. In, out, in, out. It was a rhythm as old as time itself, a fundamental, reassuring pulse in the quiet, a consistent beat in the vast silence. She shifted slightly on the stool, a small, almost imperceptible movement, settling deeper into its familiar comfort, adjusting her weight, finding the perfect point of balance. Her muscles, tired from the day's gentle labors, from the repetitive motions of spinning and weaving, began to relax further, unclenching, unwinding, releasing any lingering tension. She felt a pleasant, languid warmth spreading through her limbs, a subtle heaviness that invited stillness, that encouraged a deep, unhurried rest. The last vestiges of external light filtering through the doorway were now almost entirely gone, absorbed by the deepening gloom. The roundhouse was cloaked in a deep, uniform darkness, broken only by the faint, soft glow of the banked embers in the hearth, a single, unwavering point of soft, reddish light, barely illuminating the immediate area. It was not bright enough to illuminate anything beyond the hearth, but merely to confirm the silent, enduring presence of the world outside, a world that was now, truly, entering its period of profound, absolute repose. Ulla then slowly extended her hand, very slowly, with an unhurried grace, towards her spinning spindle that rested patiently on a small, flat stone nearby. Her fingers, gnarled but steady, closed around its smooth, cool body, feeling its familiar shape. She lifted it, again with deliberate slowness, raising it gently. She brought it close to her face, feeling the faint, lingering coolness of the wood against her cheek, a sensation of quiet comfort. She could faintly perceive the subtle texture of the spun thread still wrapped around it, a slight, almost imperceptible resistance as she turned it ever so slightly, a gentle whisper of fibers. She didn't need to spin. Not tonight. Her eyes were perfectly accustomed to the dimness, to the deep, pervasive gloom that now filled her roundhouse. She could navigate her small dwelling by feel alone, by the deep memory of its every contour, every surface, every subtle indentation. The spindle was simply a presence, a quiet object held gently in her hand, a symbol of her craft, patiently waiting. She then lowered the spindle, very, very slowly, with a tenderness that bordered on reverence, placing it back on its stone. It settled with the softest, most gentle of clicks, a sound so slight it was almost imagined, a breath of sound swallowed instantly by the vast quiet. She then rested her hands on her knees, her fingers intertwining loosely, comfortably, her posture one of complete relaxation. Her gaze remained unfocused, drifting over the indistinct forms of her loom, her baskets, their quiet presence a comforting assurance. The air seemed to thicken, to become heavier with the accumulating quiet, a tangible presence. The owl's hoot had at some point ceased, imperceptibly, its solitary song having faded into the background. Now there was only the profound, deep silence of the ancient British night, broken only by the soft, rhythmic sound of her own gentle breathing, a delicate, reassuring whisper. It was a silence that offered no threat, no surprise, no demand, no expectation. It was simply there, a vast, comforting embrace that held her gently in its depths. She felt the very subtle shifting of the air currents around her, so faint they were almost imperceptible, a gentle caress against her skin, barely there. It was the air itself settling, finding its own equilibrium in the cool of the night, a quiet dance of temperature and humidity. She was aware of the faint, earthy scent of the damp earth floor, a raw, primal aroma that was the very essence of her dwelling, the quiet smell of the land, breathing in the quiet of the night. Ayla closed her eyes, slowly. Not in a sudden blink, but in a gradual, deliberate lowering of her eyelids, a slow descent into inner calm. The world outside, the indistinct shapes within her roundhouse, all faded into the gentle, comforting darkness behind her eyes, a world of soft, unformed impressions. She wasn't thinking. Not really. Her mind was a placid lake, utterly without ripples, without disturbances, without any urgent thoughts. Images, if they came, were like faint, passing shadows on that calm surface, dissolving before they could fully form, leaving no trace. She felt the gentle thrum of her own pulse, a slow, steady beat deep within her body, a quiet internal drum. It was a quiet, constant reminder of her own existence, a reassuring rhythm in the profound stillness. Each beat was regular, unwavering, a gentle wave in the vast, calm ocean of her being. She remained seated on her stool by the hearth, in the very center of her quiet roundhouse, surrounded by the silent, waiting forms of her loom and her woven cloths, their mute presence a comforting, solid reality. The ancient land of Britain, a sprawling, wild entity, was now deeply, profoundly asleep. Its warriors slept, their spears resting. Its chieftains slept, their councils silent. Its small settlements were utterly silent, their inhabitants long since gone to their beds. Only the stars, far, far above, tiny pinpricks of light in the vast darkness, continued their slow, unchanging procession across the immense dark sky, unseen and unheard by the sleeping land below. Ella felt the subtle, comforting sensation of gravity, the gentle, constant pull that held her firmly to the earth, to the stool, to the floor. It was a comforting weight, an anchoring force that spoke of stability, of groundedness, of being firmly rooted in the world. She was connected to the earth, to the wood, to the wool, to the quiet, ancient rhythms of the land, a part of its slow, steady pulse. Her breathing continued, slow and even, a soft, unwavering sigh. The air was cool against her skin, A soft, soothing touch, a gentle caress. She felt the gentle warmth of her own body radiating outwards, a small, contained warmth in the vast coolness of the night, a silent comfort. She had no thoughts of tomorrow, no urgent plans, no lingering anxieties, only the present moment, this quiet, unchanging instant, stretched out into an eternity of peaceful, utterly uneventful stillness. The concept of time itself seemed to blur, to lose its meaning in this deep, enveloping quiet. There was only the gentle presence, the quiet being, the profound peace. The image of a single, perfectly woven, yet utterly plain piece of woolen cloth floated, unbidden, into her mind's eye, a silent, clear vision. It was smooth, perfectly even in its weave, unadorned by any unnecessary pattern. It simply existed in its quiet perfection, a testament to simplicity and utility. It was a profoundly calming image, a symbol of simplicity, of completion, of quiet utility, of being exactly as it should be. She held it in her mind, not actively focusing, not trying to define it, but simply letting it reside there, a silent, comforting presence, a still point in a turning world. She felt the last vestiges of any lingering tension drain from her body, flowing away like water, dissipating into the earth, leaving her feeling profoundly light, yet deeply settled, anchored in peace. Her eyelids felt heavy, deliciously heavy, pressed down by an invisible, gentle weight, a pleasant, irresistible pull towards slumber. The silence of the roundhouse deepened further, becoming absolute, a profound and soothing emptiness that invited nothing, demanded nothing, but perfect, untroubled rest. There was no need for words, no need for sound, no need for thought. Only the quiet, consistent rhythm of her own breathing, fading, almost imperceptibly, into the vast, calming ocean of night. And in that deep, utter, enveloping silence, Ella, the gentle weaver of plain woolen cloths, finally, softly, peacefully, drifted away into the realm of dreams, utterly at peace with the quiet, uneventful night, the ancient lands sleeping around her.